It's injury season around the NFL. We had a lot of impactful ones over the weekend. Jonathan Jones joins us once again to break down some of the biggest ones. And there was no one more scary than Rashee Rice's injury. Patrick Mahomes, after he threw the interception, runs into his knee. What's the latest you're hearing on that injury?
Yeah, so Andy Reid after the game said it didn't look good. After the game, learned that the Chiefs fear it's an ACL. You know, we're still at this exact moment still waiting on the MRI results, but as you two both well know, those on-field tests, you pretty well know if you think it's an ACL, it usually is an ACL. I assume they're holding out hope that maybe it was just a really bad hyperextension, but obviously I think that we understand what Rashee Rice is faced with and what the Chiefs are faced with, which is he will very likely be out for the rest of the season with that ACL. We're still waiting on Hollywood Brown to come back for the Chiefs. That may not be until January. Isaiah Pacheco still maybe about a month out. And so, look, you're always going to hear in the NFL, right, guys, next man up. But they're a little lacking in the cupboard right now. And so I know that everyone wants to throw up the graphic of what wide receiver can the Kansas City Chiefs trade for right now. Two things on that. Number one, I don't really know any team 4 games in that has given up on their season so much that they're willing to trade one of their top flight wide receivers to the Kansas City Chiefs. So you can think about Amari Cooper and you can think about Cooper Kupp or Christian Kirk or whomever else. I don't see that happening to the Kansas City Chiefs or anywhere. But number two, because it's the Kansas City Chiefs, the price is going to be high on the Chiefs. Teams aren't just going to hand over to the Chiefs a wide receiver, much like the Buffalo Bills did Xavier Worthy in the draft. If they do, it will come at a price, and we have to wait and see if the Chiefs are going to be willing to pay that price. So what do we know about the Chiefs and how they operate? They wait a little bit. They try to figure it out with their guys. And then if it's not working, they will make a move. It's still 5 weeks and 1 day until the trade deadline. I don't see anything happening in terms of a trade anytime soon.
Yeah, JJ, one name I noticed that you didn't put on that list was Davante Adams. Obviously, you think there is not a chance in hell that Antonio Pierce and the folks in the Raiders organization are going to let Davante Adams go, let alone to the division rival Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, not a chance at all. I know that there's some sort of like new analytics that like, oh, you actually should do trades with in-division rivals because you can get one over on them. That's
I'm anti-analytics.
No, you do not send Davante Adams to the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, you know, me and Mike were just talking about this, you know, who are going to be the guys that stepped up, because you talked about Pacheco, you talked about Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown now. So we're going to see guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, Watson. They're going to be bigger parts, have bigger roles in this offense. And truly, we're going to find out how great Patrick Mahomes is, how well Andy Reid can get a team back on the right track, although they're undefeated. We keep forgetting this team is undefeated, although it could be 1-3 versus 4-0. A lot of these games have been really tight for the Chiefs, but it all comes down to that defense, JJ. It's not just Mahomes' show.
I will say it's difficult to overstate how big of an injury this is, though. Rashee Rice was your man beater.
Superstar.
Like, he was the guy that when you had one-on-ones across the board, you were going his way.
Yep.
And Travis Kelce used to be that guy a couple years ago. He has slowed down to the point where I don't think he's that guy anymore, and so you flat out don't have that guy. And so, you know, he was second in the NFL in receiving yards heading into this past week. I don't think there's any replacing him. You have a bunch of zone beaters now. You're going to have to manufacture it. I just don't see this offense reaching the peak we thought it will, but obviously when you have Patrick Mahomes, you still should be able to move the football. All right, some other injuries of note around the NFL. The scariest one for a fan base, Anthony Richardson, goes down not once, but twice in that game, goes down, misses 2 plays, comes back in. They call a quarterback counter. And well, he goes down before even contact. He's out for the game. Hip injury, what's the severity you're hearing of that injury?
Mike, I'm so glad that you pointed out that the Indianapolis Colts coaching staff didn't protect the quarterback, the running quarterback with a bad hip, and calling that play to let him go run and give him the option to go ahead and run and hurt his hip again. That was ridiculous. Fortunately, you know, for the Colts, they did, of course, rule him out very early. We're going to see. Obviously, he's sore. If he is going to be able to practice on Wednesday or Thursday. This Colts group is, especially under Shane Steichen, very, very quiet out of Indy, and so I don't think that we're going to get too much until we get to Wednesday at the very earliest. So Anthony Richardson, this is something that has to concern the Indianapolis Colts. A number of various injuries. He's missed 13 games, but even more importantly, in my opinion, in the 8 games that he has played in and started, 4 of them now he has not finished. So he has missed more than 60% of his career so far, and 50% of the time he plays, he doesn't finish the game. These guys are as big and bigger than Anthony Richardson. Maybe not at Florida, but certainly here in the NFL, and he continues to learn that over and over again. And you would think, Kyle, that the coaching staff would help protect him if he's not going to do well to protect himself. And calling that play after he just injured his hip, I couldn't believe it.
All the things that you just said about Anthony Richardson, his inability to finish games, the injuries he's had, it leads me to believe that this coaching staff, they just don't care. They just do not care about the health of this guy because they know they've got a guy in Joe Flacco who can come in off the bench at the drop of a hat and make plays for this football team. Obviously, they'd love for Anthony Richardson to be healthy, but when you're calling plays like quarterback counter after your guy gets blasted midfield and is clearly in a lot of pain, it tells me everything I need to know about that staff.
All right, on to the last guy here who, if you had the number 1 overall pick in your fantasy draft before the end of August, you probably care a lot about. Christian McCaffrey still has yet to see a snap through 4 weeks this season. Anytime you hear a guy's going overseas for treatment, that's going to raise some eyebrows. What's the latest on him and his timetable for return?
So he went to Germany, got treatment for his Achilles tendonitis that I'm told the tendonitis, he's had it for years. But it really flared up, as we know, right at the start of the season. He had that terrible practice there on the Thursday leading in and into that, I think, week 2 game. And so then he was placed on injured reserve. I was told at the time that he was certainly going to miss more than the minimum 4 games. That continues to be the case. Kyle Shanahan said that McCaffrey, who is now back from Germany, he's going to ramp up in practice a little bit. But I could still see this being 3 or 4 weeks away, depending on how that ramp up goes. And of course, it's Achilles tendonitis. It can always flare back up. Rest helps, of course, but it can always come up. And if, Mike, kind of to your point, if you're going overseas at this point for something like that, you start to worry and wonder if this is ever going to go away.
Yeah, I dealt with that as a Packers fan with David Bakhtiari and his knee for the past few years, where it's just like, oh, he's going to be back. Oh, he's going to be back. Oh, it's like, oh. Sometimes it doesn't come all the way back, especially when you're talking about things like tendonitis, which can be just chronic and they're going to have to live with. But I will say, with what they're doing right now, I am not rushing him back whatsoever if I'm the San Francisco 49ers. I think Jordan Mason's looked more than good enough at the running back position to where they don't need to, and this is a long-term plan. What you did to build around him and what you did for this year is for a Super Bowl. It's not for a Week 7 win in the division, right? So I think if I'm the 49ers, I'm taking this as cautiously.
Yeah, I think it helps the 49ers be a better football team overall, not having to rely solely on Christian McCaffrey. The offense, obviously, with Shanahan, runs through Christian McCaffrey. And to your point, JJ, this thing could flare up again. I've had turf toe, I've had Achilles tendonitis. I would say Achilles tendonitis is worse than turf toe. I mean, it's one of those things that you squeam when you think about. You squirm a little bit thinking about your Achilles, something happening to it, because it's just not an aesthetically pleasing injury to think about. So for Christian McCaffrey, you got to rest up. And to your point about Jordan Mason, they have enough there in San Francisco right now to be okay and not panic.